Okay, hi everyone. It is September the 16th, and it's been a while since I've posted a little update here on these channels, so I thought I would come by with hopefully some sort of useful message going forward for the rest of the year. Um, a lot of people are asking when Exit the Cave 2 will be done. It's been a very slow process. It's been at times quite challenging. Um, I'm pretty much now done with the last chapter. It's going through a final rewrite. My editors have pretty much gone through the rest of the book, so we are close. It's a few months late. Normally, I do pretty good with the last few book deadlines, but this one it was based on the material. The material for this one was so unique, and it's been challenging to find how to present it in a way that I feel comfortable. So, yeah, we're getting close. So I've been able to take a little time away, and what I thought I would share with you today is a small version of a video that I put out on my locals channel about maybe a month ago. I think it was called Time and Practice, and I'm just gonna share like a short version of it here. That being, two questions came up from a different video I had posted, and from that video, a similar question appeared, which was either one, I don't have any time in my day to do. I was talking about practice and applying practice or exercises to your day. One common question that came was, I don't have any time to do practice, or I'm too exhausted to do practice. I can't. I have no. That's a big one. I had no time. That was one question. The other question was, with some people, I don't know what to do. I would like to do practice, but I don't know what to do. So this is like I say, a short response to what was I think it was about a 1 hour video. So I'll try to focus it down. And I won't be answering the questions like one after the other. Everything kind of is, because they kind of link together. So the first question becomes, when someone says they have no time, they're following first of all, telling you how busy and stressed out your day is, which, no question, that's where a lot of people are at. A lot of people are in a very stressful day-to-day world. So I get that. I get that. But the way it's normally presented is that there is something called, this is how the big spiritual books out there put it out, that there's certain things you do that's called spiritual practice, and then there's the rest of your day called ordinary life, and that there's some sort of separation between the two, and you have to put on white clothes, and you have to go to a special place, and you have to do special things, and only those can be classified as doing some sort of spiritual work, while the rest of your day is considered non-spiritual work. And that's about the biggest fallacy you can bring in, because the work begins with your day-to-day activities. That's where it begins. I'm going to talk about getting your house in order after this, but there's no question. It begins with recognizing that how do you use the day you already have and add things you'd like to do within it. I'll give you a couple of examples to try to help you understand what I mean. Richard Rose, right, the Virginia teacher that I really liked reading, he chose after he had his experience, he chose a job as a house painter. Not because that was the only job he could do, but because he liked the job in that he worked alone, he set his own hours, and he could kind of be in something that wasn't overly demanding mentally, So he could use the time while he was painting houses to think and contemplate about what he wanted to think about. So to anyone else, it looks like here's a guy just painting a house. Actually, he's doing deep contemplation and deep thinking about himself and his life and the world and reality, but you wouldn't even know that was going on. Now, I'm not saying you have to simplify your job to do stuff to paint houses like Rose did. The point being is, how can you take even your job, even your 8 hours a day that you put into a job, and locate? You don't have to create, you don't have to make space. There's space already in the job. Like if you work 8 hours, you're probably not working straight 8 hours. There's there's spaces in the middle of the workday. There's 5 minutes here. There's 10 minutes there. There's nothing's really going on, and you're kind of pushing papers on your desk to make it look like you're doing something, but you're not. So instead of just pretending and doing nothing and just literally staring off the space, well, you've just found 10 minutes where you could do some breath work, some qigong breath work. You could sit in some stillness. It could look like you're reading a report or you're flipping around something, but really you're sitting in stillness, or it's a time to contemplate, think about something. So that's a perfect example that you're taking your day, what you're already doing, and you're just adding something else you'd like to be working on in the midst of while you're doing it. When we came out of the canyon experience, the guy I had the experience with we wound up seeing the world almost the same. We had a similar experience, and we wound up seeing reality the same. And we would go to a coffee shop together in the afternoon or the evening, and we would sit there and drink coffee for an hour, right? Well, that's what it looked like we were doing. But what we were really doing is we were watching the characters, the people walking around, and we would just sit there and we would look to see, could we find an extra in the movie that was glitching out? Could we find a character that was trying to present itself as human but was not behaving in a human way? And we would not sit there. We would sit there at the same table and not talk. We would drink our coffee, and one of us might say, "Oh, the guy over there in the blue shirt, or the woman in the green dress," and then we just watch her extra carefully to see if could we zero in on, are we finding a glitch in the matrix watching the way this person was moving around. So it would seem like, yeah, we're just sitting there drinking coffee. That's all it would look like. But actually, here we are, we're performing awareness. It's a spiritual practice. We're performing awareness. We're being alert to the matrix. We're being alert to the way things are going on, the way things are structured. And then after we would sort of do this practice for an hour and our coffees are done or whatever, then we would go for a walk together and talk about if we had seen something interesting, we talk about that, or we might just talk about something else that we did and go home. So that's a really good example. Another good example. My Qigong teacher, Dr. Stephen Ong, he told me once that there's always time in your day to do Qigong, for example. There's no excuse for not doing it. If you're standing in line at the grocery store and there's 5 people in the line and you're just going to stand there anyway, he said, why don't you do your standing Qigong exercise? It's going to take you 5 minutes to get from there to the counter. So you have 5 minutes when, instead of just staring around looking at the ceiling, you can do your Qigong. And he was right. I could. And so a lot of my time, even when I was in my most obsessive practice, a lot of my practice, it wasn't scheduled. I did have some things that I scheduled, and did have some things that I literally took a half hour, an hour, 2 hours, or whatever in the course of my day when I was really obsessive into work. But a lot of the stuff I did was literally like that. It was just slotted into something else I was already doing. You have to take your kids to soccer practice, and okay, the kids go and you stand there and you watch a soccer practice, and someone says, well, I have no time for work. Well, actually you do. You're standing there for an hour. You can watch the soccer practice and pretend you're actually interested in what's going on in the soccer practice, which you probably aren't. Or you could say, I got like 45 minutes right now while I'm standing here on the sidelines. I could do 45 minutes of practice. You've not had to open up your day at all. You even haven't had to move anything around. It's just, hey, wait a minute. I actually have a block of time where I've never realized it's actually an open block of time. Now, you're limited to some of the things you can do. Yes, I mean, you can't climb a mountain in those 45 minutes, but there's a lot of so-called practice that can be done right there. So that's the first part of all of this is you don't have to necessarily unravel your day to find time for practice. You just have to rethink out the day that's already going on as to where you can add something to what you're already doing. Okay, if somebody's exhausted, somebody might say, I'm exhausted. I just work all day. Now, hopefully you will have found, something you can insert into your day. So some of your practice becomes your day. But okay, you come home, you're exhausted, you want to do something. All I can do is lay down on the couch. That's the best I can do. That's it. I watch TV. Well, when I was in a real exhaustive phase a few years ago, instead of just laying on my couch, what I would do is I would just get my chair, and I had a lake that was a small distance away from me, and I would go to the lake with my chair, and I would just do the same thing. I would zone out, just like I would have done on the couch, but I zoned out at the lake, staring at the lake, looking at the trees, listening to the bird sounds, and nothing really changed in a day. But I did this 2 or 3 days a week on nice evenings. Within a course of 2 or 3 weeks, a change started to happen. I started to notice I'm not as tired. I have more energy. I have more awareness. I'm much more clear. So if you're exhausted and you're looking to first recharge, because you can't do you say there's something you have the time. Literally, you have the time in the evening, but you have no energy to do something you'd like to do. Then the first step in recharging is getting out of the human electromagnetic environment. The human electromagnetic environment, and that includes all screens, it includes televisions, it includes the very thing you're looking at, listening to this video. All of this stuff is just the Wi-Fi in your area. It's all draining. The more time you can recharge in nature, I'm not trying to say nature is some sort of wonderful perfection gift. It's part of the matrix, right? It's as much of the matrix as anything else. But while we're in the matrix, we're going to use. You want to use what the matrix has available. If you've got a sore head, it's better to drink some water than to smash your head with a brick. I mean, common sense, but someone could say, well, there's no water and there's no brick, so it doesn't matter, huh? It's all a dream. Yeah, well, kind of, yeah, but within the experience, the water is going to be more useful than the brick. And that's kind of what we're doing here. It's like, if you're overly exhausted, give nature a chance to unexhaust you as much as possible. And you don't have to do anything. If you were literally just going to sit on the couch and stare at a TV, why not go in nature, sit down and stare at a tree, or stare at a lake, or stare at some animals, or something. So what I'm saying in the initial stages here is, for people who are saying, I have no time or I'm too exhausted, right from there are ways you can not have to add any more time. You just begin to slightly see your opportunities within the structure of the day the way it already is, if that makes sense. And in the more stressful cases, in the more challenging life cases, maybe you can only structure in 15 minutes. In the course of your whole day, you can alter 15 minutes that you can find that, yeah, I can look like I'm doing one thing and I can do something else. I can just, here's some time to do some breath work. Here's some time to do some stillness. Here's some time to contemplate something. But you're 15 minutes ahead than where you were yesterday. Every little bit helps. So that's one side. The second piece I'm going to add is, if you're not sure what to do from the standpoint of spiritual practice, again, don't worry about finding something that has a label of spiritual practice, which is, what do they do in some temple? What do they do in some monastery? What does some book tell me to do? The base core element of getting ready to any long-term spiritual work is known as getting your house in order. It's one of Rose's most spectacular terms, and it's only been in the last few years I've even understood just how important this is. And what that means is that your body, your environment, and very importantly, your mind are not in a state of perfection, but they're in a state of, you've got your life and your inner life, especially, to a certain place where you're not draining a ton of energy from yourself. So the mind is an important one. If the mind is not stable and clear and balanced, there's your work. That's your work. Your work is, what can I do to improve that? Because the more anxiety you have, the more stress you have in the mind, the more depression you might have. That's pulling energy. Not that they're bad. Remember, I've talked about this before. That they're not bad from the standpoint of, being evil or something. But they're stealing energy from giving you awareness and a balanced approach to take into something deeper. Many of what the practices you like to do first require a clear, balanced mind. It requires a certain amount of energy, and if your body is not well, if your body's ill, if your body is not getting the right kind of nutrients, then you're not going to have the energy available that you have to take into your practice. Like, literally, there you go, right away. If you have an addiction, this is the opportunity to let go of it. And it doesn't matter what the addiction is, right? Whether it's smoking cigarettes, whether it's drinking, whether it's taking drugs, whether it's food, whether it's sex, whether it's video games, it doesn't matter. It's all taking time and energy. If you're wondering, if you're involved in any of those practices, and you're wondering, I don't have time in the day, well, how about, instead of the time that you smoke a cigarette or the time that you play a video game, that now goes into what you were hoping to do for practice. See what I mean? Your day is there. You just have to restructure what you're doing, and anything that's classified as, we'll call it some type of addiction. I hate the word because it makes it sound like it's not in your control at all. But it never gets put down or weakened or lessened until you have something at the end. You have a final goal that's more important than the short-term gratification of whatever that is. Whatever the dopamine gratification is, as long as it's more important than whatever your ultimate goal is, it will always win. I was a fat kid. I was quite a fat kid when I was like 9, 10, 11 years old, very chunky. And I was chunky because I ate a lot. Not necessarily. I like to go places and eat other people's food. I would eat my meal very, very quickly so that I could say that I'm done, but I'm not full yet. And I would be like, is anybody not finishing their meal? And I can finish their meal. I was getting some weird gratification of feeling like I could eat more than anyone else. It's really goofy when you think about it, but that's how I was. Then one day I was about 12 and I looked in the mirror, and I had an underlying goal at the time if I wanted to be a professional hockey player. And I looked in the mirror and I said, that body type I see in the mirror can never become a professional hockey player. It's not possible. It's not possible that can happen. And I was very clear, like, okay, well, what's more important? This thing I'm doing when I'm out constantly for dinner, or being a pro hockey player? And I said, I'm going to give that a shot. I'm going to give being a pro athlete a shot. So I instantly talked to my mother and said, I'm changing my diet. I'm not changing what I eat necessarily. I'm just going to add a salad to every meal that I eat. But, she could still, I told her, I'm not changing the meals. I don't need you to cook differently for me. I'm just going to eat a little less of it, and I'm going to eat a bigger salad with every meal. Okay, no problem. Didn't really ask any more details of it. Just that's what I'm doing. Within 4 months, I had already changed my body shape pretty drastically, just from that one change and from having a focus. Obviously, I upped my exercises, I upped my runs, and by the time I went back as a 13-year-old to go to that to start my new hockey season, I was in a completely different physical shape. But that could only happen because my end goal, or my direction, was more important than the smaller attempted gratifications in the moment, right? So if ultimate truth, or exiting the cave, or knowing who you are, or whatever big term you want to say that you're on a pathway and that's what you want, you have to look at a lot of this stuff that's going on in your life and determine, is this really going to get me there? Like, is smoking or drinking or playing video games, is that really going to get me to the ultimate intention that I have? Because right away, as soon as you start clearing that up, and maybe you can't do like me, where you just instantaneously have that end goal is so important to you that you just change it in a minute. It's just like it just dropped. It was just done. It was like, okay, the eating thing is done, finished. It happened the same for me with drinking, when I realized drinking's not going to get me ready for my trip to Egypt. That's just when I realized all it's doing is, it's like I'm allowing myself to be under the influence of a drug, alcohol, for many evenings a week. So my awareness is not sharp. My awareness is not clear. I'm not paying attention with things. I'm not working on what's going on inside. I'm literally sort of zoning all that work out. And I'm putting myself around a whole lot of other people that are just zoning out and not doing inner work either. And I said, well, that's not going to help me. That's not going to help me get where I want to go. So I stopped. Now, I'm not saying that you yourself, if you want to make these changes, will stop, but hopefully you have to recognize that the end goal is more important than the video games. The end goal is more important than the food or whatever else, the staring and watching movies night after night, or whatever it is. That's the end goal. If the end goal is not important enough to you, you will never be able to start making those changes. But that's spiritual work. That's spiritual work. It doesn't seem like it. It's not what the books will tell you, because it's not really what people want to do. People want the wonderful, magical wand things that will magically transform their whole life in a second, and everything will be wonderful, and Buddha and Jesus will appear, and it doesn't work that way. You have to work through exactly where you are right now with complete honesty, in a way to put yourself, like I say, it's getting your house in order, getting your body in order. If your body is not healthy, then it's using up a lot of energy just on that. I mean, we know what happens, just like if our stomach is a bit sore one night, or if we twist our ankle, how much attention and focus that gets, that it's hard to do just about anything, because it's overriding everything that's going on. So that's spiritual practice. And it doesn't mean, if you've had something for a long period of time and it's been really difficult for you, it doesn't mean you have to cure it. But it means, can you find a way to get it 50% better? Can you improve wherever you are by 50%? Because that means now 50% of the body's and mind's energies that's been going into something now it's only half of that has to go into the work. And now you have, all of a sudden, half of it becomes free. These are the ways you start developing time and energy for deeper work. But it's looking at, where am I now, and what do I need to do in my moment by moment basis to, as Rose would say, get my house in order, so that the normal day-to-day interactions of the thing I see in the mirror with the matrix world around me can be somewhat simplified, somewhat easier, somewhat 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 more balanced. And maybe you have to see somebody, maybe you have to see a nutritionalist, maybe you have to see some kind of therapist, maybe you have to see maybe you have to see an acupuncturist or a doctor or whatever, to help overcome some things that you can say, I've reached another stage. It's not 20 steps up the ladder like I used to wish I was getting to. It's one step. But you know what? One step up a ladder is one step up a ladder. You're not on that rung anymore once you make the step. To go 10 steps up a ladder, actually, you don't take one big step. It's 10 smaller steps. Clear, balanced, focused, and all of a sudden, you're 10 steps up the ladder. So that's the other part I'm reminding everyone about, is that before you have to wonder, what are the grand spiritual work I can do, how in order is your house? Because the more in order your house is, when reality starts to reveal itself, when the matrix starts to reveal itself in totality, the more you're in order inside, the easier that's going to be. If your inside is, what's the word I'm looking for? If your inside is really confused and unclear, the experience, no matter how it might be, will wind up confused and unclear. And any revelation about the matrix or about reality or about yourself is difficult at the best of times. The more we're not in order on a body mind level, on an energetic level, the harder that is. That's just the way of it. So that's all I wanted to say here was, it may not seem like a lot's going on, but if some of that is put into practice for like 3 months, you would be surprised in 3 or 4 months. Let's just say how many steps up the ladder you've taken just by finding time that already exists in your day and just structuring it differently, adding something to it, removing some things from your day that you can remove that are obviously not helpful to your practice. Find ways to get your body and your mind and your life in a more balanced, simplified manner. It does start, it pays dividends down the road. It's something you won't see immediately. Like, you're not going to see it next week. You'll start to see it down the road, right? When I was 12 years old, just because I changed my diet and started eating salad with dinner, didn't mean all of a sudden, like the next day I woke up and, hey, I've got the hockey player body. It was the same body. I knew it was going to be a process. It was going to take time. I remember I was even drinking Coca-Cola at the time, which is, some of the stuff blows my mind now when I look at what my diet is now, and I think about what my diet was when I was like 11 years old. And around the same time, I had some Coca-Cola in a glass, and I poured it down the sink, and it looked like, I'm not saying it was doing it, but it seemed like when I poured it in the sink and the drain, that it was eating away the drain, that it seemed like it was so corrosive that it was eating the sink and the drain. And I thought, what is this doing to my esophagus and my stomach? Is this something I really want to be drinking? No. And maybe it wasn't doing that, but it had the appearance of it. And as I just made those changes over time, once it took, like I said, it took about 4 or 5 months along with some other stuff. And all of a sudden, when I went back to training camp as a 13-year-old that September, I was not in great shape, but I was definitely now in better shape, and I was a different hockey player. I could do different things, and I got way more opportunities than I had before. And I moved up the ladder symbolically. I moved up the ladder. Actually, I think that happened when I was, now I say 12. When I was 11, I think is when I made the change. I made the change when I was 11, and I went from a very low level of hockey to playing at like a medium level of hockey as a 12-year-old. And by the time I was 13, as I kept up the program, I was playing at the absolute top level you could play at as a 13-year-old. Made it all the way to that summer playing AAA with all the guys in Ottawa who wound up playing in the NHL. Yeah, I didn't make it to the NHL. I didn't eventually get to that point. I didn't skate well enough. I wasn't a good enough skater. But that was built in how I was taught when I was 5 or 6, 7 years old, when I first learned how to skate. If I had learned better techniques of how to skate, how to push, how to use edges, yeah, that could have happened. It didn't, and I'm comfortable with how my life turned out, of course. I'm very happy to be working with Exit the Matrix concepts and philosophical ideas. But at the time, as an example, that's how you do it. You see a change that has to be made. You find the time to do it. You make some alterations. It doesn't have to be drastic. Right? In my case, it was don't eat other people's food and have a salad with your meal. That was it. That's all I had to change. And then maybe I went for like an extra run per week, or one extra run and one extra time in the weight room. That's all I had to change in the course of a week. And in 4 or 5 months, I was ready to go. And then in one more year's time, I had taken it to the next level. And right now, the way this particular simulation is set up, the work we do on ourselves is magnified. I've seen this time and time again. What somebody would normally take 3 years to do, they can do in 3 or 4 months. It's based on just the way time is happening, the way time and space and energy are intermingling with each other right now for specific reasons I don't exactly know. But it seems like, I can't guarantee this for anyone, right? But it seems like in many of the people I've come across, they've moved many steps on the ladder much faster than you would have ever expected they could go. And not because they're doing necessarily any more than they would have done 20 years ago. It's just the impact of what you do now. Small little things, small little changes right now can have huge implications, can have huge possibilities with them. So I guess I'm throwing out a bit of encouragement, which maybe some people think I don't do very often, but that you don't have to do a lot. You don't have to change a lot to get the potential of very large rewards from the work that you do. So I guess I'm just throwing that out there to say, like, don't feel like you can't do something. Don't feel like you can. You can make a little change here and there. You can add a little bit to your day. You can get a little more of your house in order. You can find ways to implement a small practice here and a small practice there. And the opportunities for doing so right now are really, really great. So I'll leave it there. It turned out to be longer than I thought. It always does when I start these things. They always go longer than I think. Hopefully by the time I come back talk to you again in October. We'll have the new book ready, and we can start discussing. I can start discussing that project. Wishing everybody a good rest of your September. I'll be here finishing up what I have to finish up with this project, and yeah, if you like it, come on over and see what's going on at Locals, and if not, I'll be here sometime in October and let you know, hopefully, that the new book is out and ready to be read. Cheers, guys.